Just how fatal is the Fourth Holy Grail War? Does it beat Apocrypha? Let's find out. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. This is part 2 of our fate-themed death count, inspired by Dead Meat's Kill Count series. We're here to ask, which Holy Grail War is the deadliest? The wars in question are the Great Holy Grail War of Apocrypha, the Fourth Grail War in Zero, and all 3 routes of the Fifth Holy Grail War in Stay Night. In part 1, we covered Fate Apocrypha, and came up with an estimated death count of 1,265. As a general rule, I'm counting humans, homunculi, and servants, but excluding golems and animals. Not that animals aren't valuable. I love my pets just as much as anyone in my family. It's just that this challenge would be nigh impossible to quantify otherwise. Also, if someone dies and gets resurrected, that counts as a death, so Shiro will be on this a lot. Some cases get tricky, but I'll tackle them as we go. Today we're taking a look at the Fourth Holy Grail War of Fate Zero. You might expect this to be a smaller count, given the lack of homunculi and fewer combatants, but we can't forget the fire of Fuyuki that erupts at the end. Let's see what's really the case here. Unlike Apocrypha, the Fourth Holy Grail War doesn't have a slew of sacrifices leading up to it, at least not to my knowledge. Although there would have been one without Kiritsugu. If you just watched the anime, you might not know a lot of how he came to meet Airi. The head of the Ainsburn family at this time, Ubstahite, recruited Kiritsugu to be their master for the war, using the family's own homunculi to assist him. Irisfeel was made in the image of the former head, Justice, built to serve as a living vessel for the Lesser Grail. I swear, Ubstahite's got this thing for casting women to the wolves, just as he later does with Ilya. He tested her by throwing her into the bitter cold, and Kiritsugu stepped in to save her. They eventually fell in love, banged, and had Ilya together, which is where the anime starts. Does this count as a negative kill? As a joke, I'll allow it. Then I'll clean the slate because Waver kills a chicken in his summoning. In all seriousness, our first legit kills come from Ryunosuke in episode 2, who murders a family as a blood sacrifice. Tragically, before he killed this family, he killed quite a few more. His first kill was his sister, and for 30 more murders he had fun exploring new methods of madness. After this, he lost motivation and went home, where he found a rotten old book detailing how to summon demons. Technically, none of these kills count, since they aren't associated with the Grail War, but after he finds the book and starts trying to summon demons, I think it's fair game. Following the book's instructions, he sacrifices a girl and gets excited by the prospect, moving on to kill a total of 3, including the girl I just mentioned. None of these work, and his crimes draw media attention, so he breaks into a house of 4 to commit one final murder before leaving Fuyuki. Luckily for him, this is the time he succeeds. So how many people are dead here? To get enough blood, he killed the family's 2 parents and eldest daughter, deciding to keep the young boy as a demonic sacrifice. This brings our count to 6. Of course, this poor kid isn't long for the world. Even when it seems Gilles de Rais is going to spare the boy, it's actually just a ploy to savor the kid's hope as it turns to despair, as he gets mutilated by a Cthulhu-type creature. Hundred-Faced Hassan is a weird skew of the rules. He can manifest his individual personalities as split servants. Each of these is a separate existence, and so I'll be counting each one that dies in this count. The first actually has a name, Zaid the Base, who pretends like he's the only Hassan, and gets himself killed by fighting a pompous Gilgamesh. Despite all the combat at the wharf, nobody actually dies. Instead, episode 5 has Gilles busting a nut to Artoria.
Oh, maiden, my holy virgin!
At this point, it's clear that Ryunosuke's been killing kids down there in the sewer, but we don't have a way of knowing how many until episode 6. We have to reference the light novel for certain details. It describes how Ryunosuke used 2 children to complete 2 nightmarish experiments. He creates an umbrella out of a kid's flesh and ribcage, and uses Gilles' magic to keep a girl alive, using her internal organs to make her moan as a human pipe organ. The Zero anime censors this quite a bit, though you can look at the manga for all the nightmarish visuals. In the anime, we see 5 kids pinned to pillars when Gilles invades in a tantrum. I'm sure there are more, so to be safe, I'll combine these kids with the experiments. Even though Kiritsugu completely demolishes Kenneth's hotel, he ensured everyone was evacuated first, aside from his targets anyway. Good man. Instead, kills start coming in episode 7 from, yet again, our freaky friend Gilles. He's come to bait Artoria with a group of kidnapped children. The light novel specifies 10 children, so I'll go with that. He decides to play a nightmarish game of hide-and-seek, planning to kill the children until Artoria meets with him. When she arrives, there is only 1 child left, and even then the boy has been made into a trap, transforming into a horrific creature. Okay, I hate Kirei. Always have. Episode 8 has the bastard go kill Irisfield by running her through with black keys. I count this as a death, as without Avalon inside her, it would have been the end for her. In episode 9, Waver finds Gilles in Ryunosuke's lair, revealing more kids. The unrated version shows us a lot of these kids, but it's hard to get an accurate reading on how many there are. I'll do my best to count the masses of flesh, which in the light novel are better described as more of Ryunosuke's wretched artworks. I estimate at least 12. A synopsis of Zero mentions dozens of children, so to account for the children who are still alive, but are mercy killed in a fire, I'm doubling that number. Episode 10 is Reen's brave adventure to stop Ryunosuke. Things start off with Reen attending the funeral of one of her beloved classmates. She spots a boy being carried away at the end of an alley. When she heads them off, she notices that there are now 2. Reen traces the magical energy back to a hideout, where Ryunosuke's gathered a total of 6 children. It's dark as hell, but we can tell by watching the number of kids that escape when Reen saves them. Except, this was an addition made only for the anime. In the light novel, Reen never finds Ryunosuke's lair, so it's assumed these kids become his victims. Regardless of which continuity we go with, I'm sure another 6 children would be more accurate either way. Episode 11 has Hundred-Faced Hassan interrupt a dialogue between Artoria, Iskandar, and Gilgamesh. The King of Conquerors don't take kindly to spilled wine, and decides to spill their blood with his Ionian Hetairoi. Now, there's some debate as to whether Hundred-Faced Hassan truly has 100 incarnations, but in the light novel, it specifically says, the 100 faces among the Hassans. And so, minus the one that died earlier, there are 99 that get slaughtered in this battle, if you can even call it that. As previously mentioned, the soldiers of the Hetairoi itself don't count, as none of them are able to exist outside of Iskandar's noble phantasm. Their opportunity to a second life simply isn't there. Nobody else dies until episode 14, when 2 F-15 Eagles soar above the skies to investigate Gilles' creepy eldritch horror. While these jets can sit 2 apiece, between them there are only the pilots, Captain Ogi and Second Lieutenant Kobayashi. Kobayashi goes in for a closer look and gets devoured by the monster. Ogi goes in for an attack run, but is intercepted by Lancelot, who takes over the craft to use as his own weapon. Before Lancelot and Gilgamesh can finish their dogfight, Kiritsugu takes the chance to snipe Ryunosuke. Good riddance. Ogi survives through to the next episode, where his jet is finally destroyed by Diarmuid. The Riverside battle ends with Artoria's glorious Excalibur cleaving through Gilles' sorry face. Episode 16 starts with Maya shooting Solau, removing her arm and pumping her full of holes. Surprisingly, she's not dead yet, just a flesh wound. Kenneth, taking credit for Artoria's work, claims the command seals from defeating Castor, and shows his gratitude by shooting Rise Kotomine. Kiritsugu tricks Kenneth, agreeing not to harm him if he gives up the war. Kenneth caves, ordering Diarmuid to shank himself. Yep, this is what I call a rage quit. Course, that self-gesh scroll Kenneth pledged to didn't include Maya. Pew 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 pew! Piling on to all this deceit, Kirei Kotomine stabs Tokiomi in the back, literally. Hope that doesn't come back around later. Sadly, none of Kiritsugu's backstory is actually part of the Holy Grail War, as much as I'd like to count all the freaky apostles, assassinations, and Natalia, so we'll just have to let his cries of agony account for the burden. That means our next victim comes at episode 20, when Maya is killed by Lancelot disguised as Iskandar, with the power of a command spell. In episode 21, it looks like Kirei kills Zoken once, but does that really count as a kill? If we assume that every time his body is destroyed, he finds a new one, then that's a lot like resurrection. So yeah, I'll count it. Just means that Zoken will die a lot. More excitingly is the horrific tragedy of Karia and Aoi Tosaka. Aoi thinks Karia killed her husband, but we know that's all a setup. In a fit of madness, Karia strangles Aoi. Admittedly, this doesn't kill her here, but it is what causes her an untimely death in the aftermath of the war. So I'm counting this moment as the true cause. Episode 22 shows Kirei with the abducted Airi. She stands firm against his sick cruelty, ultimately provoking him to snap her neck. The sick bastard. She may continue on as the corrupted Lesser Grail, but it's kinda hard to call that living. We're coming down to the finish with episode 23. Iskandar unleashes his Ionian Hetairoi against Gilgamesh. Ea's Enuma Elish tears the entire reality marble apart, sending all of the soldiers plummeting down a chasm. As I mentioned before, none of them count, as their only life exists solely within Iskandar's noble phantasm. Thus, the only real casualty is Iskandar himself, who is restrained by the chains of heaven and stabbed. Meanwhile, in episode 24, Artoria is forced to slay her dearest knight Lancelot, only to discover his desire to be punished for his affair with Guinevere. Kiritsugu goes through all sorts of hell bathed in the Grail's mud, but all the killing that goes on is really just in conceptual space. Kirei's not too happy about Kiritsugu refusing the Grail, but it's not like he can do much about it. Dude gets shot in the back of the head. Sure, he gets resurrected by the mud, but this is a legit kill. This takes us to the final episode, in which Kiritsugu uses his last command seal to force Artoria to demolish the Grail. Excalibur uses her remaining mana, forcing her to disperse. Gilga gets drenched in the Grail mud, but this doesn't actually kill him. You might argue he gets an upgrade. Sadly, not everyone is so lucky. Destroying the Grail sets off the Great Fire of Fuyuki, which results in an estimated death toll of 500 people. While this is going on, Karia rots away in the Mato basement, slipping into the pit of crestworms to be devoured. 5 years after the disaster, Kiritsugu finally succumbs to the curse implanted on him, and passes away peacefully beside his adopted son Shiro. Well, shoot. That about wraps up the war, leaving the fourth war a good 590 kills below the competition. Still, 675 ain't nothing to scoff at. I'm sure the Ionian Hetairoi would make all the difference, but what can you do? There's just no way Iskandar could secure enough mana to materialize his army and actually live in the modern era. For the sake of speculation, however, if we were to include his army, the most accurate statement I could find on its size is tens of thousands, which is at the lowest 20,000 soldiers. 20,675 would likely blow the entire competition out of the water. But alas, it was not meant to be. But wait, there's more! What were the best and worst kills in Fate Zero? To me, the most impactful was the poor boy who gets nommed by Jill's Cthulhu pet. While it happens off-screen, the sounds are just so gruesome that our imaginations fly. As for worst, I'm gonna have to go with the Zoken kill. Mainly because there's nothing satisfying about the impact. He falls apart like tissue paper. Don't fret, however. As part 3 of this series, we'll be looking at all 3 routes of the 5th Holy Grail War. I think you'll be surprised by how many lives are lost. So, do you agree with my counts? If so, do you think Fate Stay Night has what it takes to outkill Apocrypha? Be sure to subscribe and look out for the next video. Thanks for watching! If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and most of all, smashing that notification bell as if it were your waifu. That way you'll never miss out on all of my anime content, lore videos, live streams, and Holy Waifu Wars polls. My vids are struggling to get featured, so that bell is absolutely critical. If you want to support me directly, check out my Patreon, or consider donating via Super Chat. And as always, celebrate your fandom.